Hello, everyone, and welcome back to SkateProud Chat. Today, Sunday, we're gonna have David Wilson, an amazing choreographer, figure skater from Canada, and I'm so excited because I know David for such a long time. We have spent a long time together doing shows, and he has choreographed the recent shows from Spain, from Revolution on Ice, and so I'm so excited to have this chat with him today. So please go ahead, and if you have questions, don't forget to click the question button, and then we will try to answer at the end of the chat. I'm requesting David to join the chat, get a notification somewhere where the two faces are, and see if we can connect. So if you see this, David, I just sent you the request instead. You will get a notification below where the two faces icon is. So many of you know David already for a long time. He has choreographed so many Olympic champions and medalist programs all over the world from so many skaters. So I think here you are, David. There, okay, I think we're connecting. Waiting for, oh yes,
Oh my
hello.
God. I'm sorry, Heavy. I'm really dumb when it comes to my niece is here with me and she helped me.
Okay.
Okay.
Because there is two ways around. I could have sent you actually the request instead because I saw you, but yeah, welcome.
Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, baby.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm at my cottage. I brought my niece with me and her
Okay.
three little poochie lady. Hey lady.
Oh my
Who's that
God.
girl? She's so cute. Oh my God. I'm really in love. She's gonna be making lots
Yeah,
of noise.
you sent me the picture yesterday. So
She
cute.
discovered this squeaky toy. So
Oh.
can you hear it?
That's so funny. So you're at the cottage right now and
Yeah.
away from the city. That's nice because
Yeah.
must be super nice. You guys have the lake nearby?
Yeah. Well, I can see the lake. I'm not on the water, but I have a beautiful view. I have a
Oh,
sunset
that's
view
nice.
of yeah.
That's
Yeah,
nice.
I came here. I bought this place for my last dog, actually, Hunter, my beautiful boy Hunter. He was a Weimaraner, and I lived in a condo downtown when I got him. And Weimaraners are a hunting breed, so he was like, "Dad, I need a forest." So, so they would had always been a dream of mine to own a cottage.
Yeah.
So yeah, I bought it for him. And of course, I lost him a couple of years ago. So it was hard in the beginning to come here without him. But with this pandemic, I've been so thankful to have this place.
Must be nice, especially now also that it's so hot today. These last 2 days it's like
Yeah.
crazy. You can't
Yeah.
even breathe outside.
Yeah. So I've been spending a lot of time here in the last 3
Yeah, of
months,
course.
3.5 months. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you've been a bit away from the city this during the quarantines, which is nice and relaxing. Yeah.
Yeah. I've got 2 acres. So, I don't know, you just feel more free and more protected.
Yeah.
And,
So
yeah.
what is your expectation? What is the situation now with the skating? Do you have any plans? Are you planning to get back and choreograph any skaters
Yeah.
for the season? And
Well, it's hard to know exactly what's going to happen. I have been back a little bit, and I've been doing a little bit of via FaceTime and things like with some
yeah,
clients. But yeah, it's hard to know what's going to happen with our season, and I mean all the the tours that I usually am involved with, the skating shows,
Yeah,
they've
I mean, and
canceled. And
you go choreograph maybe somewhere the other side of the world.
oh
And
God, by now I would
you're
have gone.
traveling all the time right now. Yeah, in this
By
time of
now,
the year.
this is my busy season. Yeah, so I would have gone to Korea by now. I would have gone twice, two different trips to Japan. I would have been to Switzerland, and I probably would have been to Spain. So yeah, and I don't know. I mean, like, I've talked to a few other coaches and stuff, and we're all trying to suppose how are even competitions going to take place, because how can skaters come from all over the world and
Yeah,
then quarantine for 2 weeks and then suddenly compete without any practice? Like, I don't know how it's going to happen. It's
it's
hard to
difficult.
wrap your
Yeah,
brain around.
and I'm thinking
So
like how. I mean, also with the limitations right now. So I know in Toronto some rinks are opening, but it's like
yeah,
small
but like
limitations
in Montreal, they're not skating yet. I
at
mean,
all.
except for
Well,
the elite. I think the
yeah,
federation secured some time for the real international level skaters. But that's a very, very small
yeah.
exclusive
But it
group.
like
So
this really hits you hard because I'm feeling like, um, well, even now there's some rings that are opening. When you
yeah,
choreograph normally, you try to book the entire the
yeah,
whole session to be able to, or like you try. The normally is quite. There's a lot of rings that do ticket eyes and there is availability, right? But right now it's kind of like there's
it's
waiting
very
lists. It's crazy
it's become very expensive
as well.
for the kids to even just skate, and also it's also you have to really plan ahead and book ahead, and there's no more just walking in and doing a session somewhere. I mean, the cricket club, for the kids at the cricket club and those of us that work there, are very blessed, with a much easier situation than most places. But I know other coaches that are having to go to rinks that they've never been before and book time, and spend thousands of dollars of their own money up front and then charge all the parents. It's not easy.
It's
It's
difficult, yeah.
it's
And I feel
very,
also that even at the cricket the training, I mean, I guess the plan for many skaters might be to maintain the same solos because all they can do right now is probably just keep in shape
well,
and jump and train.
yeah, it depends on the kid. I mean, there's some clients that I have that they've kept the same programs already for 2 years. So even if nothing happens with competition, just to stay kind of engaged and to
Yeah,
kind of have something to look forward to, it's necessary to get a new program. So there are some new programs happening, but certainly I think you're right. I think there will be a certain number of people that just say, it's not worth it right now. I don't know. I haven't really talked to any other choreographers, so I don't know what the general kind of communities. I
yeah.
don't know what's going on. I'm in my own little insular world. So
It's sometimes at this point it's better to just take your time, not stress about this. Yeah. Um, but yeah, hopefully we get through this soon and go back to normality. But
yeah, I think this is, what's interesting. My perspective on this is, this brought the world to its knees, and it's kind of good for us in a way, because we need to kind of get over ourselves and this crazy life that we live. It was such manic desires and manic needs for more, 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 and without paying attention to the environment, without paying attention to a million things that we really should care about. And
yeah,
I'm not a huge activist, so I can't kind of give any kind of speech from a pulpit, but in my own humble way, I feel like, ooh, I we need to shift a little bit. I think we really need to shift focus a little bit in life in general. Um,
it's
so
hard for sure because we also as skaters we have skaters, coaches, choreographers. Like the whole skating world is such a traveling lifestyle.
yes, very international.
Like it's just like non-stop. It's if you think about it, it's so crazy how much we've traveled and
Yeah,
how difficult this new situation can turn out to be, right? And like
yeah,
how everything
It's
has,
very far-reaching, isn't it?
yeah. And
It
of course, we know that traveling, and this is obviously, we are like going to the limits with this, and as you say, the environment, and like, it's not the ideal, but at the same time, it's just the way it works. So it's kind of difficult to find. Will be difficult to find the balance for that. Yeah.
Well, and I think, I mean, the one thing that I love about my career is how much it's afforded me to travel, because it was always my child. I used to have a globe when I was a little boy. I grew up in the country, and I have a brother. He's 13 years older, but I don't have any memories of him living at home with us. So I felt like an only child. It's me, my mom, and my dad, and our two dogs, and that was it. Life was very kind of isolated. So I grew up with one of those globes, when you're a kid, and I would spend hours, literally hours in my own head, just looking at all the names of all the little towns and all the countries, and imagining if I would ever get there, if I would ever see that, what would it be like, and what would the people be like, what would it look like. And so I feel very blessed to have had the career I've had even just so far. And it's afforded me so much travel and to get to know so many other cultures, other people. And it's really, it's really a wonderful thing, because I think the more you travel, the more you realize that we're all the same.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter the language barrier or any religious background differences or the
Yeah.
color of your skin, or people are really people. And in a good way, there's a consistency there. Human nature is very consistent, and even some of our bad habits are very consistent too, across, the good
That's,
side and the bad side is we're very predictable species,
it's so
and
interesting what you're saying. It's so true.
I think so.
And it gives you a perspective, and like, I mean, of course, you've had such an amazing experiences, and you've done so many shows, so like you've been everywhere. Literally.
Almost, not
Almost,
everywhere.
almost. But yeah, it's true. I think we are very lucky, fortunate with that, with the skating
Yeah,
world and the opportunities it has given us. And
we had so much fun on Javi's tour, and
of
Revolution on Ice
course,
the last few years have been extraordinary.
yeah.
Going to the Canary Islands and all these
Oh my
exotic.
God, it's true.
I mean, I never thought in a million years that I'd ever go to the Canary
Spend
Islands.
the Christmas time there.
It was
That's so
wonderful.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So talking about skating, I want to know. We all want to know your story, and since you were a kid, how that you went into figure
Well,
skating? What
the
was?
story goes, I come from a very small town, Nobleton, Ontario. Maybe at the time it was, I don't know what the population is now, but I want to say it was around 3,000, and just a little hamlet. And we lived a mile outside of town. And I
How
guess
far is that from Toronto to have like an idea?
about half an hour from the northern limit
Okay,
of Toronto.
not too
So
far then.
because Toronto is growing and growing and growing, it's really not that far anymore. But when I
Yeah,
was a kid,
exactly.
what used to be farmers' fields are all now huge subdivisions. So, but Nobleton is in what they call the green belt, so its expansion is limited, and it will always kind of remain. It's horse country, it's beautiful rolling hills, and anyways, we lived a mile outside town, and the story goes that I was told that for some reason we went to the club show, the club end of year carnival. Every small town has a figure skating club,
Mm-hmm.
and in Canada, and at the end of the year they do a little ice review, a little
Yeah,
ice show for all the kids to show off their skills, and they
yeah.
usually get some guest stars, and the people put a lot of effort into it. The mothers all make the costumes, and the
Yeah.
fathers
I
design the
think it's
sets,
very common
build the
tradition.
sets, and it's a community endeavor. So I was taken there. They brought me there as a little kid when I was 5, and apparently I said, I want to do that, right? So then the following year, so that would be in the spring, in the fall, so the following season, starting in fall, they brought me to enroll me in the Learn to Skate program. We
Mm-hmm.
used to call it the Badges program. And I do remember that day, because I remember them bringing me to the rink. And I mean, I was a really really shy little boy, mama's boy sort of thing. And I remember the ice being full of kids, and it kind of looked like a zoo.
Yeah.
You know, here's me, kind of an only child type kid from the country, and it was like all these kids, and I didn't want to go on the ice. Like that is not what I
It's
wanted.
scary. The kind of skate is like,
I think in my head,
so many kids.
I thought, like when I said I want to do that, it was the show. There
Yeah.
was light and the costumes and a spotlight on me. You know what I mean? In my little mind, I thought that we would just do that every day.
Which you're doing now. But
you know, there would be a show every day.
Yeah.
It was fun. So, yeah. So, I mean, they had to kind of nudge me into it. And then my next memory is just being bored. You know, it was all group instruction.
Yeah.
And I remember feeling bored because it would take the other kids so long to learn the bloody mohawk or whatever it was. And I would drift over to the next group. And I remember, you know, playing with one of my friends after taking my skates off, and my parents were there. And the head coach, had requested a meeting with my parents. And I thought, oh, shoot, I'm in trouble. Because I've been not listening, and I've been wandering around doing my own, you know what I mean? And I remember thinking, I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get in trouble. I'm going to get in trouble. But they were having their private talk. And I was playing with my friend, and I'm thinking, oh, I'm going to get in trouble on the drive home. What am I going to do? Well, what it was, you know, and I remember because we were in the bathrooms hanging off the stalls, like little monkeys, like little kids do. I was 6, right? Or 7, maybe 7. Maybe it was like at the end of the first year or whatever. And I remember because I cut my hands from hanging off the stall. And that's, I think, whenever there's some kind of physical pain or trauma, you retain the memory more. Because I remember I was all bloody and I ran to my mom and my hands were all a mess. So what it was, the head coach of the club had said to my parents, we think your kid has talent. Please don't take him and put him into the hockey like all the other boys.
Yeah.
But you know, it was just a feeder program for the hockey, right? They teach him how to skate, and then the boys play hockey.
Which is, what is the average?
It was the 70s, right? Like, and it was a small town. So that was the conversation all the way home in the car. It was an argument between my mother and my father.
So your father wanted you to do hockey.
I wasn't in trouble, but my dad was, I don't allow my son to do goddamn figure skating. You know, that was my dad. My dad was a wonderful guy, but he was, my dad was like, if you can imagine that little, like he was a little bit short for his age. He was very charming.
Traditional into that. Like,
yeah, he was.
Okay, he's a boy, he's going to do hockey.
He was a rough and tumble kind of a guy, you know, like he was a bit of a little street fighter. He used to get teased for being small, so he learned how to fight young, and he was scrappy-do. My dad was a scrappy-do. And my mom was a little more refined lady. Like my dad was from the east side of town. My mom was from the west side of town. And so she spent her whole life going, oh, George, don't say that. You're terrible. And my dad was to be like that. So but I remember my mother, I remember exactly what she said. And I remember her indignance. Like I remember her tone. She said, well, George, he said that he thinks he might have talent. And so that kind of shut him up. Anyways, my mother always got her way. So
you ended up being a kid from a small
I became
town.
a figure skater, and my dad complained about how expensive it was his whole life.
Oh yeah, of course. So, but like back in the days, like if this still happens up to today, because the average is like the standard, let's say, is that when it's a boy here in North America, they put them into hockey, and so you ended up. We're talking about a long time ago, when like
early 70s, yeah,
exactly. So and you ended up going into figure skating, coming from a small town.
Especially 1 or 2 boys. That's it, you know.
So fast tracking that a little bit, I understand what you were in this little town, but when was the moment when you really switch or like focus fully on figure skating, and had a change in your life, whether you went to another city for training, moved to Toronto,
Yeah.
or when was
Well,
this period?
yeah, when I was like 13 turning 14, that was there was a girl that was kind of my best friend at the time. Well, there was two girls that I skated with, Debbie Adams and Wendy Cleveley, and we were kind of the three of us were the three ones with any kind of viable talent, I guess you could
Yeah.
say. Most of the rest of the club were more pleasure skaters, you know, not that they were talented, but like to have any real chance of maybe being
They
competitive,
were just doing it as an
kind of
activity.
just the three of us. And the two girls, each on their own way and their own time, like just before me, Wendy went somewhere and Debbie ended up going to the cricket club, which is a very expensive private club. It's probably like being a member of a country club where they play golf and stuff, but there's no golf,
Yeah.
but there's other
Yeah.
things. And that was really kind of, it was a, you know, it was, I, I've always feel indebted to my parents. You know, I come more from a more blue collar background, and it was really, it was a big deal for them to become members there so that I could skate there and then get, you know, these big name coaches that we knew nothing about.
Yeah.
We were very naive, very green, and they they did it. I mean, my parents did. I have so much to be thankful for what they
Yeah.
sacrificed for
I think
me.
this is the
You know,
story of the figure skaters that we ended up owing so much to our parents because they, without their efforts,
I
we
wouldn't have my
would
life
have
that
this
I have
career.
today.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
And
remember my dad. You know, the cricket club, as you know, you've skated there.
yeah.
There's kind of no money exchange. You have a club membership number and you sign for food. And I guess I went a little overboard my first, you know, I'm a kid, right? And I would go from school to skating and skating to school and was pretty independent. I still lived in Nobleton. My dad would bring me in the morning, drop me off either at
And then
skating or
pick you
school,
up.
and I'd go back and forth. So it was really fun and really exciting for me because I'm this little small town boy. When my first bill, the monthly bill came in, I guess I'd gone a little overboard with things I signed for. And I remember my dad sitting me down and saying, you know, we're not rich like all your goddamn friends at the goddamn cricket club. So it was like, oh, okay, I need to be careful, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Like that's amazing. They did that big effort, and
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So
But you're
basically,
lucky too. You've got wonderful parents. I mean, I think like I lost my parents much too young. I was 28 when my dad died, and I was 29. 11 months later, my mom died. It was awful. It was so hard. I was not mature enough. I wasn't ready. I was independent. I had my career well started. So, but you know, it was too soon. But I think every day since the foundation that they gave me, you know. I feel so blessed because not everyone gets that.
no, that is
Not
for
everyone
sure.
has good parents. I know some
Or
wonderful.
not all the parents decide to dedicate their life to their kids. Like there's other
No,
activities, like in Spain, soccer, football.
and not all
Next
parents
door,
are
you just go and
capable.
do it, right? So
Not all parents are capable of loving unconditionally.
mhm.
Many people they do put conditions on the love that they give to kids. And I have some wonderful friends, people that I adore, that I admire, that I look up to, and having got to know their story. Oh my God! Like I mean, things I can't relate
Things
to,
you can't. Yeah, you are like you will
what
not
they
have
had to
even think about it.
endure,
Yeah.
you know. So I feel lucky. I lost them too soon, but like I love your parents when I meet them because they kind of remind me of
Yeah.
my. They're just they just love you, you
Yeah.
know.
They told me they were so excited to see this chat today. So I'm sure they are
Ah.
connected to.
Oh, good. Hi, mom and dad. Hola.
Oh my god! So basically, since that moment in your life, you've been at the cricket your whole life.
Yeah,
So right
yeah.
now, you were training there. You were as a competitor, and
Mhm.
then you transition into coach choreographer up to today.
Well, okay. So I kind of gave up on competition at around 16, 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Because by that time I could tell that I just didn't have the talent for the jumping to even consider going any further. I was really good at figures, actually. And I did love the artistic side, but I was painfully shy. So it was in a really subversive way. Only if I was really alone would I ever express myself. But I got it in my head. My last coach was Peter Burka, and she was wonderful. She kind of screwed my head on right for me to kind of go on in the world. And she had done the shows, and she tried to help me get into Holiday on Ice.
Yeah.
Which didn't work because I wasn't tall enough to be in the chorus, and I wasn't good enough or successful enough to be a principal skater. So I fell into the cracks in between. And then and I applied 2 years in a row. And the second year I lied and said that I grew an inch.
No
but they
way.
still didn't hire me.
That was the only reason why it worked.
So I had a friend who was touring with Icecapades, and we had skated together for years at the cricket club. And I was complaining to him about the tour was coming to Toronto.
Yeah.
And Gordon Cornish, his name was, and Gordon recently passed actually within the last year or so, unfortunately. But Gordon said to me, listen, come and audition for Icecapades and just tell them you're 5'10". You're a good skater, they won't care. Stand up tall, tell them you're 5'10". I was like, are you sure? I can't lie, Holiday didn't want me. Like, he said, trust me, just come and skate. So sure enough, he was right. I went and auditioned after the show, like you do, just for the chorus, and then within a month or two, I get a call. They'd fired somebody or lost a line skater, and they hired me mid-tour. So I just turned 18, like I was a baby.
Yeah.
And I went off and I joined Icecapades. And I ended up touring with Icecapades for 5 years. And kind of, I went from being a chorus skater to getting a couple understudies. And then my last year, I got what they used to call HAP, which was an acronym, and it stood for half-assed principal.
Oh my gosh.
So they created this role. And so there would be a bit of a kind of a quatuor or a smaller group they were HAPs, and we would be able to do jumps and spins and stuff, and it was choreographed. And then we would also have one or two understudies.
Your moment,
Yeah, so it was a big accomplishment for me. And
that's good, yeah.
I loved
that changed.
I loved those years, the camaraderie of being with a whole team. It was a big cast, touring together, eating, living, like sharing rooms and working. And it was like having all these brothers and sisters. It was like a big, long, extended school trip. And I learned so much from those years. And then there were principal skaters on tour, like Simone Grigorescu, Robert Wagenhofer, and that I just idolized. And I got to learn so much from them. I guess you could say, emulated their skating. Mm-hmm. And it had a big effect on me. The choreographer of those years, during those years that we did Ice Skates, was Sarah Kawahara, who is an amazing genius. And she actually took from the same coach that I did for several years, Ozzy Colson. She's a Canadian girl. Yeah. And became a performer and then choreographer and, ended up in the States. So, I never really got to work with her one-on-one because I wasn't good enough, but her work was all around me. And I just, I was so affected by everything that I saw and was exposed to, so. Yeah. I had no aspirations of teaching. None. Zero.
You didn't really coach over. You went.
I never
you went from a competitive skater to show.
Sort of almost like borderline competitive,
but so you really started into the show world really early, which it's funny that the story when you were a kid and that was kind of like what captivated your attention, and you were that's what I want to do, and that's what you ended up doing.
It's weird how life works because none of it was intentional, really. My main reason, what I thought of wanting to do the show, and it ties into being gay, because when I was at that age, when we moved to the city, I was about 15 and a half, and then you start getting a little more independence. And, I started kind of, I remember my first house party was a bunch of skaters, and there was this one girl she was more of a friend of skaters. She wasn't a skater herself, and I knew that she would go to the gay bars and stuff. And I just kind of quietly asked her, "Can I leave with you?" Her name's Cheryl. I said, "Can I go with you?" And she was like, "Yeah, sure." So I was like 17, and the party was already down. So I left and I went with her, and it was the first time I went to a gay bar. And so, like during those years, you start to realize you're gay. Like, oh my God, like back in the 80s,
This is something, of course, I wanted to ask you about.
And going in the show was an opportunity to kind of have some freedom, but like I wasn't ready to go to university. Do you know what I mean? I didn't know what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And it seemed like a way for me to kind of have my own life, pay for my own life, have some freedom, figure out who I am. I wasn't ready to tell my parents.
Yeah.
I wasn't ready for anything, So
that's what I wanted to get to as well. So, in your personal life as a skater, you were kind of living very independently. Well, even as you say, when you were a kid, you were going to school in Toronto. So basically you were the whole day on your own. And then at what point were you already living on your own in Toronto, and that you had the chance?
I joined the show. I went from my parents' home.
Okay, you went from there. Okay.
With SkateProud. About halfway through my 5 years, I met what became my first partner, my first serious relationship.
Yes.
I left the show to go live with him, and we set up shop together in Montreal, Jean-Pierre Boulet, and we started teaching together. And, I had never had my own apartment.
Yeah, okay. So,
I didn't have my own apartment until JP and I broke up.
Yeah, wow. So how was the actual, because to put it in a bit of a timeline, the moment that you came out to your parents, and as you were saying, you were not ready, so you decided to go into the shows, and you were trying to figure out things. So
it was hard. God, it was so hard.
How old were you then?
I never should have doubted that my parents would stop loving me. I never should have.
Yeah.
And I didn't really. I was scared with my dad, because my dad made a lot of anti-gay comments and anti-everything. He was of that 50s generation where, the Italians were called this, the blacks were called that, the gays were called this. Everyone had a name.
Yeah.
Even the French had everyone. It was like the era of prejudice was. Like that era was so, and it wasn't really in his heart. It was the environment he grew up in, But see, what pushed me to tell them, Javi, was when I started my relationship with Jean-Pierre, that was the first time it was something different. It was something deeper, something more. And I came to a crossroads where I knew either I have to tell them of what Jean-Pierre and our relationship is, or if I don't, I'm going to naturally distance myself from my parents. And I couldn't bear, as scared as I was, I couldn't bear to have any, I was so close to my parents.
Yeah, and I feel
like
that
both of them, I couldn't.
As you said, your parents gave everything for you.
Yeah.
So even though you were scared, deep down, you probably had this connection.
Yeah, and I think also maybe selfishly having the connection with Jean-Pierre gave me a little bit of confidence, because having that love and that sense of belonging with him gave me a little bit of strength to fess up and own up to it. But I was only 20.
So having that relationship helped for sure.
Yeah, I was 22 when I told my parents. I was 21 turning 22.
Yeah, and we're talking about a different era, as you said.
It would have been, I was born in 66, so it would have been 87.
Yeah.
Sort of. I remember around the same time that I realized what my feelings were, that I was homosexual, because you have those feelings. I had those kind of attractions toward other boys very young, but they were in a very innocent way. Because you don't know even know what sexuality is. But when you think back, you're like, I remember my dad taught baseball. So I was on the youngest team, and then, but he would stay and teach the older boys. And there was a boy on that team that I thought was just so beautiful. And I just remember watching my dad coach, and I was in love with this boy. If I was, 7, then he would have been 9 or whatever, and I just thought he was so beautiful and so good, and he was so, like, he was just the coolest ever. And I had this crush, but anyways, what were we talking about?
Oh my God, baby. I love you.
I just go on and on and on.
So, going to where we're going, you fall in love with your first relationship, and I feel what drove you to tell your parents that.
Yeah, you know what? Yeah,
That was
I mean, I had been in love.
That was a difference, because one thing is what you were feeling towards other boys, and what happened is you got into this relationship. You felt something so strong that kind of pushed you forward, that gave you the power, the energy to go ahead.
Well,
and
I had little boyfriends, and I'd had my heart broken. I had been infatuated. I'd had little relationships, but nothing that stuck that I came to a point where I felt I wanted to share it with my parents.
Yeah.
With JP, I could tell that it was going to be
something different.
I couldn't hide it. I couldn't hide it. And they had met him already as my friend. Like, come on,
Yeah.
So anyways, what was interesting is I told my mother, when we would always have a break in between tours, sometimes a few weeks, sometimes a couple months even, like depending if you were going from east to west or west to continental or continental back to east, or switching from west and going back to east, the time was different. This particular break was brief because I was going to Continental, and Continental was doing a special engagement at Atlantic City, a 2-month engagement in one spot on the stage of the showroom of the Tropicana Hotel, which is really cool. Anyways, besides the point, I had a short break, so I went home. I spent some time with JP, spent some time at home with my mom and dad, and it was down to the wire. And I was like, I need to. But my dad had a really bad motorcycle accident, and he'd been clipped by a pickup truck and did acid fatigue. Anyways, he had a broken pelvis. He was on the couch with a broken pelvis. And I don't know if you've never known anyone. Broken pelvis is the worst possible, because they can't do anything for you.
Yeah.
There's nothing they can do.
And that's kind of like another.
You're just like, and every move you make is excruciating pain. So he was on the couch, in this horrible way. So I told my mom, and when I told my mom, of course, I was very emotional, started crying. My mom wasn't upset at all. My mom was like smiling, and she said, oh, well, dear, I've always known. And I said, well, if you always knew, why didn't you say something? Because how many, times did I mean, not really suicidal, but when you're a kid and, you're just like, you hate your life, and, you do have some pretty traumatic emotions when you're growing up gay.
Yeah. And how was then
self-hatred and a lot of things.
It's true. And I cannot even imagine. I think also the time you were living, it had changed everything so much right now. Mm-hmm. But of course, that's kind of like amazing that your mom was so open and.
Well, she was quite like my mother. She said that she'd started reading up about it when I was around 6, 7 years old.
Oh, okay.
So whatever kind of crappy
information there
was about it at that time in the 70s.
And then, so how was the moment? Yeah.
Let's be real, okay? Yeah. To be homosexual was still considered a personality disorder by the American Psychiatric Association until 1972, and it was still illegal in most of the land until that time as well. So when I was 6 years old, it was 1972. So any information my mother sought out couldn't have been all that great, but my mother had such a good heart. Like she made sense of it how she could, and she was ready. Like she was totally cool, totally cool, loving, warm. And she said to me, she said, Don't worry about your father. I'll tell your father. Because she knew that my father would have a very immature, very egocentric, very male. He would have his own issues and he would have a bad reaction. And she didn't want me to be exposed to that
Yeah.
reaction. Do you know what I mean? She was really smart, my mother.
So basically, your mom, after that,
She told him when I left to go back on tour, when I went to go to Atlantic City, she told him. And about 2-3 weeks into my time in Atlantic City, I get this long letter from my father. Oh my God. Like my dad,
you will not expect him to write you ever.
I didn't know what I expected. It was so sweet though. My dad, it was like he blamed himself. It was this awful thing, but he took on all the blame on himself. There was nothing, there was no bad energy towards me. He wanted me to come home. It's like he wanted to like do my life over again.
I think you mentioned this story to me once, and he was blaming himself because he thought that you were this way because he didn't do better.
Yeah,
And
he blamed himself for everything. Everything. And
so
it was like he
what
was.
happened
And
when you
so,
came back home and
no.
you
So
had that conversation?
I called him. I mean, I was on tour for the rest of
Yeah.
the year. Right? So I called him and Dad, I got your letter. And I mean, just his voice on the phone was like an 8-year-old boy who's done something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, you know, like this and like, just like pitiful. Like, just like, you know what I mean? Like, I'd never heard or seen my father that way. Because my dad was like,
Yeah.
my dad was like, you know? And I didn't quite know how to approach it, but I think I said the perfect thing to him. I said, Dad, I got your letter. You didn't do anything wrong. I'm only telling you about this now because I have to, because I know that I can't change. And I know that I am this way naturally, not because of anything you did or you didn't do, or that Mom did or didn't do. And I've met this wonderful person, Jean-Pierre, who you've already met as my friend, but it's more than that. And I need you to know what the truth is. And I said, the thing that scares me the most is that I can't bear the thought of you not being able to love me anymore. I can't bear the thought of my life without you. So all I need from you, Dad, is to be cool with it. That's what I need. I need you to love me as you always did, and I need you to accept Jean-Pierre. And I didn't even mention all the jokes that he used to make, but he knew. Like, I think that was what he felt so bad about.
Mm-hmm.
And let me tell you, the next time I saw my father, I mean, he was so pouty about it. It wasn't like, suddenly a cheerful conversation. But the next time I saw them, maybe a month later, when he was recovered, they drove down on their motorcycle. The last week we're in Atlantic City. They drove all to Atlantic City on their motorcycle. And he gave Jean-Pierre a big bear hug and picked him up off the ground. And same thing with me. And he was forever changed.
Wow.
Like, he transformed. Like, my father, it was the same guy, but like, if he ever heard anyone say anything disparaging about gays, he would like go to their throat. Like, he became this like born again gay father, like a born again Christian. But I have a gay son, and God damn it, I have a gay son.
Exactly. That's amazing, I mean? And that's amazing to think about. Back, as I'm saying, back in those.
Yeah, this was like
a different time. So going to resuming that a little bit, it was such a very difficult period for different reasons, as you said. It was not accepted in society. It was considered like if it was a disorder. It was also the era.
Yeah. Let me clarify. For my generation in the 80s, it was so much easier than for the generation in the 70s. And I imagine for the 70s, easier like it went from being something you were arrested for to something you were just kind of humiliated about publicly. And then by the time it started to become a little bit trendy, kind of in my late teens, 20s, that's kind of, but it certainly wasn't what it is now. I mean, so many people were in the closet, and
Yeah,
you
it
know,
was a
you
whole
just,
different, and there was also, yeah, it was a difficult time for so many
you know,
reasons. Though.
and I have to say, you know, I grew up paying for being a male figure skater. I was brutally teased and humiliated at school from the youngest age. You know, because my picture was in the paper and I was missing school all the time. So everybody knew I was a figure skater. So I was a little faggot before I knew what faggot meant.
Yeah,
And I suffered so much for being
bullied.
like bullied,
Yeah,
really severely bullied. I was scared for my life. I used to have stomach aches, so I didn't have to go to school, you know? And
mm-hmm.
not only that, that's one thing, but it's that you grow up with a sense of humiliation. I
Mm-hmm.
used to imagine, I'm not so bad anymore, but I would imagine and walking into any room that everyone would be laughing at me. Because that's how I grew up. That's how I grew up. And let me tell you something, our sport was not so great at supporting its own. We were very slow to start kind of embracing. I mean, we lost an entire I mean, I got so lucky, Javi. I came out at a time. I always say if I had been 5 years older, I'd probably be dead from AIDS because
That's the other part I
they
was
didn't know.
want to mention.
They
It
didn't
was
know.
such a difficult time that not just that it was difficult to come out, then this crisis of AIDS happened,
Do
and
you
kind of
realize
like
how
it
many?
made another barrier to even come out, like because it's like
Oh,
thinking,
it was
oh, figure
frowned.
skater gay, and then relating to AIDS, like it was a whole thing that happened, and it was so terrible for you. Like I'm sure, like you've lost a lot of friends, and
I didn't lose. I mean, I've lost a few, but like I say, had I been 5 years older,
yeah,
the guys that are 5 years, 10 years older, they're right in the. They lost. I mean,
yeah,
and skating as an industry, skate. I mean, we have lost so many geniuses and
yeah,
so many former champions that nobody talks about.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? I mean,
It,
top of the list, John Curry, for God's sake. You know what I mean?
exactly.
But the list is long, 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 long,
Yeah,
and goes deep. And there's, you know, there's it. I mean, you know, I would dare to say that ISU or any of the country's associations down the road been very minimal. I mean, at the time there was no support, and I mean it was very frowned upon for any of those. I didn't really suffer from any of that because I was not a famous skater, and I was, you know, I grew up with the luxury of anonymity sort of thing. But any of the famous skaters, I mean, you know, now Eric Radford is out, and you know, right. But even just, I mean, Johnny Ware was one of the first ones to be flamboyantly out. That's not that long ago.
no,
Like, so
and
these guys were
it
not.
was not until even later that a competitive skater
Yeah,
would say,
no,
yeah,
that we, you know, it's interesting now because I look at all of this thing with the Black Lives Matter and everything, and I've always I empathize with this so deeply because I think it very much mirrors the gay experience, and even within the Black community, the Black Lives Matter,
yeah,
they have their own issues with
yeah,
phobia,
with the
and
LGBTQ plus
they
community for
very
sure.
much do,
They
like the
have
rest
big
of the
work.
world.
They have, yeah, they have to work
So
that out.
we have suffered so much, and
I feel, and even you think it's up to today, there's not that acknowledge of our community and support, as I'm saying, from big institutions mentioning our like the LGBTQ plus
you know,
community, honoring the skaters, and
and it's
giving,
only it's only very recently within the last maybe 10 years that there's a substantial number of champions, ex-champions, coaches, and otherwise that are openly gay
yeah,
within the context of figure skating. It's only
yeah,
very recently, very late, way after Ellen, like decades. Do you know what I mean? Like, we have no way, our association and our sport has no way led any part of the gay movement. It's been meekly following along, and oh, okay, yeah, now we
up
can
to
be
today,
open.
up to today. Like
It's ridiculous.
right now, even up to today, there's no work on these issues.
It's
There's no
ridiculous.
work
Yeah,
on our community, on the discrimination, on, and that's why I feel your story today, it's so important, because you're giving us a vision of so many years before and how everything has changed. But in a way, there's still a lot to be done. And
absolutely. And you know, like I have one memory. I was maybe 19, and I was dating this guy. That it was during one of my breaks, you know, between tours. So I would
mhm,
come home for a month or so with my parents. It was before I met JP. And I met this boy. I was actually going out with my cousin Robin, who's a couple years older than me. She's a lesbian, and she came out later than me. She had a much harder time accepting her sexuality than I did. So I kind of spent a whole summer hanging out with Robin, going to lesbian bars. And I met this boy, and we had this summer romance. And I remember it was probably the first time going to meet with him in the village. And you know where the Starbucks is now,
yeah,
in the Toronto Village?
yeah,
Well, that location was a fancy French restaurant, and upstairs they had extra seating and stuff. We went for dinner, and it was really nice, really romantic. And this was a young guy my age, like you know. And I remember distinctly walking down the street with him after, going towards the subway, holding hands, and that's one of the sweetest memories. Like one of, you know what I mean? Like these are the things that were not afforded to gay people up until just, if you live in an urban center. I mean, now for God's sakes, they start identifying as gay when they're
yeah.
14, and they have little friends at school, and their parents are all,
They
and
have platforms like
it's
we're
so much
creating,
healthier
and
now.
it's a
Oh,
whole different story for sure. I
so much
feel
healthier.
you're so brave. You were also lucky with your parents for the time being back then, to being so accepting, and um, but I feel
I think having that incredible, um what's the, you know, when an unconditional acceptance from my parents
I was gonna say
gave
unconditional love. Yeah,
unconditional love, it gave me so much confidence in my life in so many ways. And I was not a naturally confident person. And through the years, you know, there was kind of a period, in my 30s, where I had a bit of a early 30s, a bit of a midlife crisis, and was, you know, partying a little bit too much and enjoying my success a little too much. And I had a lot of younger friends, you know, in their 20s and stuff. And I knew so many young guys and girls with horrible parenting situations.
yeah. This is
Not,
it's like, it's so crazy what some people have to go through, or still have to go through, families that they kick them out of their house.
oh,
So like,
awful.
I just it is that's why there is a lot to be done, and it wouldn't be still enough. But I feel um that what we're trying to do here at SkateProud, and we want this to be a growing place of experiences like yours, that is so important. And as
Good
well,
for you, Heavy.
no, it's true. And I feel that it gives us a big perspective of how the skating world, even though we think it's very open about it, it's not that open. And
It's not. It's
institutions
not.
also
And the other
not
thing,
that forward about it. They're not that forward supporting about it.
and I just want to inject one other thing, is it's not open about it. And there's so much of an image problem.
Stereotypes.
Stereotypes.
Is
You
Yeah,
know, they want the guys to be guys, and
yeah,
they want the girls to be girls. Like,
yeah.
what about a girl who's a little bit more masculine?
Or
Can we have some openly
yeah,
lesbian,
that is
like,
queer. Exactly.
skaters? There are
It
many,
is
you know,
hard.
like
It
there's
that makes it harder for them too.
gay, like, why even artistically, why do men have to be like, why are we so still bent on gender
Yeah.
and gender rules?
It,
We're
it
living in the past,
yeah. We
you
need to
know?
be open about it for so many reasons. I feel this part of an advocacy as well, and like we are trying to help, but as well, I feel like as skaters, when we're truly ourselves, this helps us to be ourselves on the ice artistically. And I'm sure you,
Yeah.
as a choreographer, like you probably have a lot of friends that even nowadays they're still not open about it, or like you have
Oh,
examples, and then like you as a
yeah,
choreographer, you are giving your best, being your true self,
of
and
course.
not giving a damn, you know, about what people think, because you are like being stretching your arm and being like amazing, you know what I mean, like you're putting yourself truly, and like that's why it's so important to be proud and to own it, to be
Yeah,
confident. It's
yeah, and
a building process.
to free. I mean, you know, I I struggle so much with my sense of confidence and personal identity and masculinity and everything revolving around gender and sexuality and emotionality and personality, that it's it's complicated when you're in a
Yes,
sport that is so presentational. It's like, you know you're taking on this role, you're taking on that role, you're doing this, you're doing that, like, like
it is
I
it's a judge sport, so that's a big
yeah.
component, and I feel
And we're working with young people who have not, they've not necessarily fully, they're not fully evolved and got things. Like, I just think that there should be, we need to make sure that we try to get away from stereotypes and
exactly,
expectations around gender.
to break stereotypes, to support our
Yes.
community, to also exactly break this ideal of a figure skater that has to be a certain way, and appreciate all the different aspects. This
Yeah.
is applicable to anyone,
Yeah,
and
and being artistic, being creative, and being attached to music and expressing music and all those things should have very little to do with gender. Now, obviously, there's some rules, this and that, but then maybe you can do a different take on it.
yeah.
Change it up. Do you know what I mean? Like, I just think we really need to challenge ourselves in that front, and I include myself in that. Because this new generation is amazing. Like, the new generation, the kids, they amaze me at how evolved they've become in terms of life. It's
So just
unbelievable.
just wrapping up this week, the conversation went so fast that we only have 2 minutes.
Oh.
Um, it's been so crazy, but I loved it. Yeah, I feel, David, you've brought so much to the skating world as a choreographer, just because I think you're being your true self, and you've always been open about it, and I feel this is so important, and your story today is also so important, that we have an example of a great choreographer, that everybody really in the skating world knows you, and you are open about it and giving us this experience that I'm sure is going to help all the figure skaters, future generations. And as you said, there's a lot of things that have improved, and there's a lot of things that still we can
Yeah,
work together as community, skating community. We're a small family. So
for sure.
uh, yeah, I want to say thank you so much,
My
David. And if you want
pleasure.
to say something to the people that is watching, and your small vision of what we can do as a community for the skating world. Yeah.
I really enjoyed talking to you, and I applaud you for this platform. I think what you're doing is amazing. Good for you, because no one's done it before. And so we should all thank you for that. And I
Thank you.
just think that in every avenue of life, we need to have acceptance. We need to be accepting of taking people as they come to us, you know? And everyone is different, everyone is unique. We all have our unique stories, and to just get rid of the expectations and the format, and just, be
And
more
be
open.
proud, be true ourselves.
Be true
Our
to yourself, and it's the journey about trying to figure out who you are, what you have to offer. So
Exactly. Well, David, thank you very much. I'm so happy that
my,
we had this chat today. I hope I see you soon,
me
sometime.
too, I miss
I don't know
you.
when. I miss you
Let's hope
too.
we get the chance to do some more shows together,
Oh my God, I would love to.
and just
Hopefully, these
training,
things gets better and we can plan again something.
Yes. Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you, David. Take care, okay?
Bye bye.
Love you. Bye.
Love you too, babe. Bye.